So, what does your church really stand for? Has any pastor or preacher or evangelist from the pulpit told you the AIDS virus was invented by the USA? Google 4647773, it will bring up the patent. Or any mention of the over 5,000 FEMA camps with guillotines? Or that the King James 1611 is a Freemason Bible? Or that the god of Freemasonry is Lucifer? That there has never been a man walking on the moon? That Paul was a Pharisee lawyer, a Roman citizen, and could not have been an apostle, as Jesus only chose 12, and was dead and ascended 15 years before the invented conversion on the road to Damascus? Or that the word Lord is found in 6,666 verses of the KJV? That Solomon was a black witch who conjured demons to build Solomon's temple? Or that his first act as king was to murder his older brother Adoniah, after his mother Bathsheba lied to David on his deathbed? Or that Obama's a skull and bonesman, his secret name Undertaker? Or that George Washington was a Freemason and worshipped Baphomet? Or the Capitol, Washington, D.C. is laid out on the pentagram? Or the Twin Towers was an Israeli Pentagon operation with detonation charges set in the 3 buildings? Or all of Obama's administration are Israeli Jews American? Or Jesus Christ is already back and the spy agencies have been trying to kill him for decades? So now let's tell a fairy tale. You and your husband George have gone to visit your daughter Jill and her partner Jack. They have 3 children and have decided finally to marry in their new church. They are doing very well, live on a hill in a well-to-do neighbourhood. There they are attending a new church. You had been invited for the wedding on Sunday, a small service, and you will get to meet their new family and friends. As a confirmed Catholic, you had talked George into at least tagging along, promising to keep the peace. Walking down the street with Jill and the grandchildren, you notice in the distance a dark building with gargoyles, a Baphomet statue on the front lawn next to George Washington. You draw the scene to your nearsighted husband's attention. Your grandchildren, little Hussein and Michelle, are skipping along ahead. You are still annoyed by the name of the twins, but it's a free country, and your daughter and partner are Republicans. Further down the street, another 2 blocks, is a Catholic church where you had your daughter baptized. That is, if you can call a dab of holy water in the sign of a cross on her head some 23 years ago a baptism. Well, at least the priest did mumble Jesus in his Latin spiel. Your mind skips the scene momentarily, thinking to yourself, if immersion in water was good enough for Jesus, the age-old question lingering unanswered, when did the Catholics do away with immersion? The happy children skipping along turn and up the steps, dancing round Baphomet in Washington. You cry out, come out of there. Then you are reprimanded by your daughter. Mum, that's our new church. What? Yes, come see. The newborn gets her vaccinations each Sunday, and last week we all received our chip. It's great. You don't have any money or driver's license, social security card, medical, even grocery shopping. You just walk out the door through the scanner. Mum, it's fantastic. More and more people joining the church. You should look into it. And the kids love it. They go to FEMA camp next week. We have seen videos. They are so looking forward to it. It's like a summer camp. They love it. And Bill has a huge government contract. He is making $3,000 a day for just making 2 classified units. And the parts are delivered each morning. All he has to do is assemble and test them on a pig carcass. And we give the meat to the church. Mum, we are so happy. Stunned. You have to pinch yourself to see if you are dreaming. Choking for words, you ask your daughter, what is Bill assembling for the $3,000 a day? Okay, Mum, if you can keep a secret, we have orders for the next 2 years. You mutter, okay. Guillotines. Dear, wake up, you're having a nightmare. straight to the internet. Nothing. You pick up the phone. Nothing. Frantically, you punch in 911. Nothing. Suddenly, the power is cut. You scream out to George. He's in the shower, yelling, "Who turned the water off?" A pounding on the door. It's the police. You scream for George. It's the police at the door. In a towel wringing wet, he appears at the top of the stairs. "George, it's a loud bang." 6 men in black burst in, grab you, smash you against the wall, snapping on handcuffs. "Do you believe in Jesus?" You stammer, "Yes." Then you're dragged into a van. Finally, George wakes you. It was only a dream. Your Lucifer Bible says the frightening prophecy, Revelation 13:15, "And he had power to give life unto the image of the beast, that the image of the beast should both speak, and cause that as many as should not worship the image of the beast should be killed. And he causeth all, both small and great, rich and poor, free and bond, to receive a mark in their right hand or in their foreheads, and that no man might buy or sell, save he that had the mark, or the name of the beast, or the number of his name." As the Bible is a Lucifer book, it says you will be killed if you do not take the mark of the beast. So take it. If they say, at the threat of a FEMA camp, "Do you believe in Jesus?" say no. Or if they say, "Do you believe Leonard Golightly Marshall is Christ God in the flesh?" say no. When you get home, the right-sized chip, it can be cut out and carried in your pocket. Tape it onto your skin. Don't tell your pastor. He, under threat of losing his head, name you as a subversive, but it is probably dead by then. Kenneth Copeland. What an abomination. 33-degree Mason. Kevin Rudd, Australia's Prime Minister. 722 BC, the 10 tribes of Israel were defeated by Nineveh, Assyria or Syria today. Scattered, they sailed on merchant ships to Europe. Today the cities and towns have as emblems the same as the tribes of Israel. The river Danube is of the same name, is of the name Dan, for example. Benjamin is the area of Jerusalem, and Judah the royal tribe which became Israel. It remained in Jerusalem until Nebuchadnezzar's army built a siege wall around the city, outside the range of the catapults mounted on the wall. Zedekiah had 4 sons and 2 daughters. He had been placed on the throne by Nebuchadnezzar after his brother and father had rebelled. Jeremiah was the holy prophet who advised Zedekiah to not go up against Babylon, but he was determined, as Zedekiah was determined, made an alliance with Egypt, and then its army was intercepted by Babylon, and then Nebuchadnezzar waited until the inhabitants of Jerusalem were starved and surrendered. While this was occurring, Jeremiah moved the temple implements and Ark of the Covenant, hiding them in a grotto, sealing it up. Firstly, the Bible. Although it is a Babylonian Greek Old Testament abomination heavily influenced by the Talmud, it is nonetheless a witness of subversive treachery, and like those descendants of Cain choosing themselves as the chosen race. Likewise, the abomination it is has been promoted as holy. What we can deduce is, in its subversive evil, are threads of truth cut off leading to dead ends. The location of the Ark of the Covenant. Just one. The Old Testament of the British was translated from the Babylonian by 72 scholars. The story goes that 6 men from each tribe, 10 tribes were scattered to Europe and ceased to exist. There were 2 other Old Testaments, Alexandria and Jerusalem, yet the King James 1611 is a Babylonian translation by 72 word-perfect versions identical to each other. It's all crap. Now, as it is forced to retain some truth, even Daniel, but scholars say it was written 165 years BC, and if so, when was it included? How long after the magic 12-tribe 6-scholar version? Okay, it worked for the Knights Templar, and they may have the same war mentality as Freemasonry and the Jews above them. What part of the Old Testament is accurate? None. And the New Testament? None. If it were genuinely from God, it would not support a Mongolian dressed up as a rabbi. If Ronald McDonald was entreating your kiddies in a birthday party at McDonald's, and a youngster tugs on his mask, and Ronald is hiding a Chinaman, is it not the same as going to Israel and doing the same to a rabbi? And what is exposed? A Mongolian. There is not a Jew left in the entire world. They are all Mongolian Khazar. If his DNA were examined, would it expose a true Holy Land Jew? No, even back then he was not a Jew. A Jew is supposed to be of the tribe of Judah. They are Idumean of Esau that filled in the void. In fact, due to their inherited disorder, all have been examined as they have a genetic flaw in their genes, all because of inbreeding of their Mongolian lineage. Modern Jews are not of the royal tribe of Judah, nor of the 12 tribes of Israel. The Khazar emerged out of Russian Khazaria and Turkey in the 800 AD era. Ever opportunist, the Mongolian adopted Judaism of the Pharisee and today ties right into Saul's New Testament domination, overriding the apostles Peter, James, and so on. The European nations are descended from the tribe Solomon married into, Sodom. Following the lead of Solomon, who married the incestuous daughters of Lot, saved out of Sodom, and these were dispersed to Europe. By 722 BC, all gone. The only tribe left was the royal tribe, and they took over the duties of Israel, but had no genetic link to Sodom. The true Jews were Essene and were captured by Babylon in 586 BC. At that time, the Ark of the Covenant was hidden under the area where Jesus, was crucified. Yes, it has been found by Ron Wyatt on January the 6th, 1982 at 2 p.m. and I was 982 weeks old. While at the dig, an angel spoke to him, overheard by another man. He said, "God bless you for what you are doing." Ron Wyatt asked him if he was from around here. He answered, "No." "Are you a tourist?" He said, "No." And then he answered after a pause, "I have just come from South Africa and am on my way to the New Jerusalem." Ron Wyatt said the man looked like he would have expected Jesus to look like, a man wearing clothes closer to what Arabs wear today, and he was a big man. In 1982, I had been already to South Africa several times, and then back in Australia I declared New Jerusalem, since the Middle East and all of the Northern Hemisphere is an abomination, being offspring of Sodom in Europe and North America, and the lunacy of Christian and Muslim religions. In 1991, I spoke to the Mossad in Ottawa. I told them I was Christ and gave them my address to come and prove it. Kill me. I left instruction where the depth of the lake was 666 feet. That was on Sprout Lake near Port Alberni, Canada. They sent assassins and failed. In 1995, I was befriended by a Jew named Doc Hansen. He came to stay with me in Coombs. I had a small camper trailer. He tried with cyanide. After I had opened the can he had chosen, the cyanide filled the room after I bit into the red salmon. He had left me to start without him. Returning, he opened the door, smelled the cyanide, leaving the door open, saying he forgot his towel in the shower. In fact, he actually still had it over his shoulder. A long period passed. He finally returned, sniffing the air, saw I was still alive and said, "You're Christ." He regained his composure, then told me the Jews would rule the world. I said, "No way, you are not Jews. The tribe of Judah is Ireland and Scotland," and he said he would never believe that. Here is that Coombs Road off the Albany Highway on Vancouver Island. He had just tried to kill me. He admitted I was Christ, yet insisted the Jews would rule the earth. He remained my guest for a week, rambled on about the Torah, which I assured him was bullshit, but I said he would be reporting back to the Israeli embassy in Odyssey. The mission had failed. Why did I tolerate this murderer? I had invited the Mossad to try and kill me. They failed twice, and yet here I am today, recognised by Pope Benedict XVI as the Christ. Now, why did I not tell Benedict in the first day we were talking that whoever got elected would not believe him or me? He, that is Benedict, was instrumental in flushing out the Antichrist. It's quite simple. Once a pope is elected, he may be a Freemason who has no belief in Jesus, or he may be a believer. Either position does not identify the pope as Antichrist. What does Antichrist mean biblically? To be an Antichrist pope, he has to deny that Christ the Messiah has come. And this is what Francis did when he denied me after being told by the former Pope Benedict XVI. 5547 is an opponent of the Messiah, Antichrist, from 473. At that meeting, when told by Benedict I had come, Francis denied Christ and fulfilled prophecy. He, the specific Antichrist, and that was the meeting at Castel Gandolfo on March the 23rd at 2 in this year, 2013. The meeting started at 12:15. It lasted 1 hour and a half, 45 minutes. They were praying together in the chapel. The second 45 minutes was cut short when Francis refused to believe the report of Benedict, thereby becoming the specific biblical Antichrist. I was 69.96 years from conception, which was April the 5th, 1943, being 1910 years after my resurrection, same date, 33 AD. In days, 45,555.555. 555 times is Christ, found in the KJV 1611. 6996, literally in diminutive, literally in age or importance, and 2555, the number means evildoer, and Hebrew, criminal, violent oppressor. On April the 3rd, this is Australian time, was the night of April the 2nd in Rome, Father Giuseppe Civello and Monsignor Rossini, they were both kidnapped, and Sister Maria della Rosa was also taken away. Father Giuseppe was reported murdered on April the 13th, 10 days later. Monsignor Rossini, we have it on good accord that he is also assumed murdered. We see how the Concordance Dictionary of Words listed in the KJV 1611 is the sprung trap. In the Strongs, there are 8,674 words in the Old Testament. If this is years, it converts to 3168 days, or 86.74 years, the age of Benedict XVI on January the 11th, 2014, the 70th birthday of the Christ. In the New Testament, there are 5,624 words in the Greek. The subtraction 5624 from 8674 is 3050, and that is the number for the word Yah, found only once in the Old Testament. So it's a mathematical formula, if we like, a very simple one, telling what it's all about. It's the indication that the New Testament has removed Yah from the New Testament. That's it in a nutshell. So Psalm 68 verse 4, sing unto God, sing praises to his name, Extol him that rideth upon the heavens by his name, Yah, and rejoice before him. So Yah has been removed in the New Testament. So what is it all about? The Jewish lobby wants to attack Iran. The real truth is glossed over. 50 to 60 years the world has known about the return of the dwarf solar system. Over 100 astronomers who talked are dead. The media always hypes its world order masters. The same from Reagan, the Star Wars scenario, aliens are coming. The idea is based on the false teaching of our children that we evolved, and so do the aliens, who have been trolling their presence for decades on the heels of the Roswell incident. I was there in 1991. It was being promoted by Walter Holt. He thought I was a 33-degree Mason, the handshake. He was on the 6th floor building models of the Greys. He was there rent-free. Walter Holt told me he was the public relations officer of the 503rd Strategic Air Command, and he saw the aliens and announced it. Then, to accelerate the lie, the Air Force denied it. The aliens are coming all right, but they are not strange greys hell-bent on invasion. They are physical giants we have proof of in archaeology, angelic men who built all of the structures around the world using gigantic stones. They had machines that could fly around the world and lift gigantic stones, machines that could drill, shape, fit huge stones. They were on Earth up to 3,600 years ago when the Nibiru solar system returned. The largest pyramid in the world is in China. The authorities banned Western investigators for fear the giants that built them were European, tall, bearded, blue eyes, blood-red hair, 400 pounds, and flew around coming from the east and leaving eastward in some craft. The pyramids in China. All natural history hides all relevant ancient artefacts. They are in museum basements like the 14 feet tall skeletons of giant men. What cannot be hidden are the huge stones, many well over 1,000 tons, quarried, lifted, placed in structures often hundreds of miles distant. Although the ancient structures are so huge and impossible to have ever been carried out by human beings, the ideas vary from our ancient ancestors, which were vastly more intelligent than modern man, or aliens did it. But if so, they were pretty stupid. Establish a gigantic, otherwise useless structure in South America, demonstrating engineering so advanced no modern nation could accomplish, then leave. If we look at the way huge stones were quarried, the 1,000+ ton stones of Baalbek are finished on all sides, and begs the question, how did they finish the flat surface, the one still in the ground? Here is a classic lack of logic by archaeology. This man looking under the stone left protruding out of the ground. All agree the pyramid in Egypt is the single greatest masterpiece. It is mentioned in the book of Isaiah, but not in any other book, with the exception of mention in Psalms being the stone the builders rejected, a reference to the capstone, and also 3 times in the New Testament, from Matthew 21:42, quoting, Jesus saith unto them, Did ye never read in the Scriptures the stone which the builders rejected? The same is become the head of the corner. This is the Lord's doing, and it is marvellous in our eyes. However, a church will not talk about it. That word is actually being changed too. It was pyramid in the Aramaic Essene account of the Gospels. Mark 12:10, have ye not read this scripture? The stone which the builders rejected has become the head of the corner. This was the Lord's doing, and it is marvellous in our eyes. Luke 20:17, and he beheld them and said, What is this then that is written? The stone which the builders rejected, the same is become the head of the corner. Whosoever shall fall upon that stone shall be broken, but on whomsoever it shall fall, it will grind him to powder. So sorting through the Gospels and the Old Testament, it comes down to this. If you were in a court of law and the expert witness against you was a rabbi, then pointing out to the jury that the Israelis claim to be the chosen and can rape, murder the men, have sex with the child, provided he or she is 3 years and 1 month old, the same expert has a secret belief to lie, cheat and steal from the goy that he believes are you. Logically, his testimony must be disregarded. Capital letters. All evidence must be disregarded. They replace the false Jews. Jesus quote, "You are of your father the devil," a reference to Cain, the first murderer. That's in John 8:44. The Babylonian Mishnah is the origin of the present-day Torah. The prophets of the Bible have been changed where possible, reversing and having Lucifer speaking and making prophecy and so on. In every major museum and library there is a Jew removing books of history. Therefore, the Bible being a proven lie, sprinkled with a remnant of truth, and even then one has to be totally aware of the presence of angels, and if any person in it can be trusted, it has to be the Jesus figure. For as such, only the Jesus principle will overcome the lie of the false Jews who intended to start World War III ASAP. Obama has stated it does not have to get UN permission, nor the Senate, to attack Syria at a time when the Senate, which just happens to be on a break, as of this date, Saturday the 31st of August. Will he? Well, he's just announced he is now handing the decision over to the Senate when they return. His fear is assassination, just like JFK when he denounced Freemasonry and the Jews. Will he go ahead with the rounding up of people into FEMA camps? If he does, he will certainly be assassinated. If he starts World War III, the same. If he does not, the Jews will try and kill him. You may recall he was going to Denver International Airport. We contacted his children via our friend in France, Susan. She sent a letter from us to Michelle Obama, read by Ash, myself, on YouTube. It was sent to Michelle's daughters on YouTube, Obama's daughters. So naturally his daughters read it. It was an appeal to her, Michelle, pointing out her husband was worshipping Lucifer and he and his family go underground in Denver Airport, the lower levels, are where horrors take place so dreadful he could not imagine. As president, he would be ultimate sacrifice after being terrified watching his children, then wife butchered. Bottom line, he owes me. I pointed out he could become the hero of the world by repenting. I offered him forgiveness and everlasting life. The point is, his daughters were made aware his skull and bones name is Undertaker, and they would have to talk to him about it. It is supposed to be a secret. And then at the same time we had with us in Australia a man who handled Obama's mail after his election. He and his wife and daughter came to stay with us, and then later in Fiji we introduced the cures for their diseases, diabetes 2, cancer, elephantiasis and AIDS. We treated babies covered in boils, and the cause was a New Zealand baby formula with soy all the way through it. We advised the mothers to give the babies coconut milk, locally called Boo, the green coconut water. We established 2 centres for healing and taught the natives what they must do to achieve good health and cure these diseases. I should note on that, to avoid all cooking oils, the only cooking oil that is safe is coconut oil. You can easily identify the oils that are dangerous by the convenient level and large quantities, easily dragged into the shopping trolleys. Canola and soy, very dangerous, causes infertility and diabetes too. Now, we had sent 33 faxes to the Commodore Frank Bainimarama, an arrogant man who would rather keep the $10 million a year from the Clinton AIDS Foundation than announce a cure. We soon became a threat. He had us arrested and deported. However, the news spread all over the islands, and although the army were following orders, they listened intently, so did the police, how to cure their diseases. Now, as fate unfolded, this is prior to our being deported, we were in Nandi and met a man who was a customs officer. He listened to us talking to the immigration officer when we first arrived. Actually, no, it wasn't when we first arrived. It was about 6 weeks we'd been there. We treated George that afternoon, and he came back the same night with his family, and from then on his whole church came to our door, about 10 at a time. Diabetes too was rampant there. It is a devastating disease. When diagnosed of it, the locals know they will face the chop, as the disease causes poor blood circulation, and so they prepare for their feet being chopped or whatever part of their body becomes dead due to poor circulation. We started the cure and found the lack of energy disappeared overnight. This is diabetes type 2. and it was the calcium hypochlorite. This spread like wildfire, as it was the natives' most prevalent disease. What happens is the receptors on the cell become coated with a layer of plastic from the cooking oils. They'd given up using their beautiful virgin coconut oil because it's more convenient to buy it from the supermarket, and then they believe the advertising. Flora, heart, friendly. Yeah, right. Okay, so this layer of plastic is from soy, canola. It's all the polyunsaturated cooking oils. The clue is in the poly. Poly equals polymer. All of them. All of the seed oils, do not cook with them at all. Now, you may be familiar with MMS2, discovered by Jim Humble. I had emailed him some years before, and he told me how he discovered the cure for malaria. He said his latest discovery was calcium hypochlorite and how he prepared it, suggesting several days of treatment. This chemical is available from any swimming pool store worldwide for about $20 a kilo. It is used to shock treat a swimming pool to kill all parasites, fungus, bacteria, germs, whatever's swimming around in there that you don't want to absorb into your body to cause sickness. Then chlorine maintains the pool balance. We used the powder in 00 size capsules and had immediate results. Once the calcium hypochlorite is ingested, it goes into the stomach. It becomes hypochlorous acid, which is produced by your immune. As a matter of fact, hypochlorous acid is your immune system. This is what it becomes. So think of it as a boost your immune system, because if you're this sick, then your immune system is not working. It's been shut down through compromising foods over the years. So that's what the calcium hypochlorite does. It's perfectly safe for ingestion in small quantities. Although it does smell like chlorine, it is not chlorine. George introduced us to his church, a group of only 222 members. Church members held services in the grounds of a family which had a large bourre, a building with a central pole concrete floor and thatched roof. It had been built by a man who said it must always remain in the family. At that time, the grandson, Steve, married to Flora, she was suffering an odd affliction. Her waistline was breaking out in what looked like boils. It was extremely painful, spreading around her waist. It was known locally as, they called it the belt, very common, however deadly. When it encircled the victim, it usually took 7 days, and then once it met in the middle, the person died. We were asked if we could help. Flora came with the first group of people that came the very next day after we treated George. So, yeah, we're skipping right along. So we were asked if we could help. Yeah, so this happened back at our cottage. We had been treating people there just a couple of days, people coming pretty much all day, over a couple of days, 10 at a time. Flora was one of the first lot, and Steve and her husband, we treated her. But after 2 days, management at the resort wanted us to move. They thought we were making money out of our enterprise, and so we had to move. But it was all part of what had to be fulfilled. Now, the bourre had been made available to treat anybody, but most of them had diabetes type 2. And so patients had been arriving. We went over to the bourre after we couldn't be at the lodge anymore. Now, yeah, Flora was there on the first day, and yeah, she was in a lot of pain. Actually, she couldn't sit for the first bit. She was listening to us, but she couldn't sit down. So we treated her, put her on the wrist pulsar, silver water, ozonated silver water, and the first capsule of the calcium hypochlorite as I continue to talk to them, teach and preach. And she actually sat there for 3 hours on the, and she sat there listening to everything that we had to say, and it was the first time that she could sit without pain. Now, the very next day when we saw, actually we didn't see her the next day, it was, she had gone home and slept for the first time that night, and then she slept all the next day, because what was happening, the healing process kicked in immediately, and all of the poison that was inside of her, in her blood, and causing this pain, was coming out of her body, and now they were showing up as like ruptures on the surface. So, yeah, she slept pretty much 24 hours catching up, and then emerged on day 3. We took, I think, 3 videos of her healing process. It's amazing. Now, still back at the cottage before moving over to the Bure, where Stephen's sister, Diane, came to visit, she told us, she confirmed what Stephen had already told us when he came in with his group the day before Diane. Now, she told us that her grandfather, this is Stephen had told us, stipulated that the Bure must always remain in the family, and is why that Stephen and Flora were living there with their family. Why? The old man, their father, actually it was their grandfather, had told their father, the old man who was their grandfather told their father that the name of God is Yahweh, and that the Christ would come to that Bure, and the Bure would be famous as the news would spread all over the world. He taught that being Christian is not, I did some editing here, is not about tithing to the church. It was about loving and caring for each other. So what was happening was, these were the very things that we were sharing with the natives. And I remember Steve sitting there amongst the group, and he was just awestruck, his eyes getting wider and wider, because, first things that we do is tell people the name of God is Yahweh, and, it's why Brian is called Yahweh today. And, yes, probably the second thing we told them is to stop tithing. And it's Babylonia, etc., etc., etc. Well, his eyes were lighting, and then after he listened intently, he told the group, which were his buddies from the church, that he knew this to be true because he had heard the same from his own father, who had been instructed by the old man, which was their grandfather, and then the story about the Bure. So this is why we had to move from the resort. I remember the phone call. It was about 10 o'clock at night, the management saying we were to stop our business venture. The grounds that were being occupied by our visitors, because there were so many, we were sitting outside and I was teaching them outside. They were not for their use, they were for the use of the people living in the cottages like ours. So we couldn't be there anymore. So it was all to fulfill this prophecy of the old man, because we moved the next day over to the Bure. And the news will go out about that Bure. It's already been up on the internet from the moment we were there. We were filming, knowing we were fulfilling prophecy. And so when the world gets used to the news that the Christ is back, when Benedict is released and the reaping, etc., etc., that Bure will be famous and people will go there, as they will come to this place here where we're staying now. Any place where we have been, where the Christ has been throughout his life, and before I found him, and then after, then we'll become famous. So, what we're about... that's meaning in the next of these slides. So what we're about to witness is the angelic spirituality, which causes names of places, streets and numbers in a divine synchronicity as follows. Now, Rothschild is undoubtedly the most evil of names, as it for centuries has caused millions of Christian lives to be lost. The Rothschild bankers financed the French and Russian revolutions. They installed communism, and during World War II, Stalin murdered 60 million Russian Christians. And Stalin, of course, was a Jew. It is entirely appropriate that Christ must be reborn, just as Jesus, he was born a baby into hell. And so he must be a second time. He died on the cross as Jesus. He died on the cross April 3rd, 33 AD, and then raised on April the 5th, to be conceived on April the 5th and 6th. The crossover time is because of the difference in time between Jerusalem and Australia. There's about 10 hours difference. So 1943, then reborn on January the 11th, 1944. And he was raised until the age of 942 days at 105 Rothschild Avenue, Rosebery, Sydney, Australia. So that identifies the devil right there, because the Christ has to be born into the pit of hell, just as Jerusalem was the pit of hell the first time. Rothschild is the ruler of hell. Now, 942 days, what's the big deal? Well, it is the name Jesus is found in 942 verses of the Satanic King James Freemason 1611 Bible. Everything is entirely aimed at forbidding Christ. Yet as the numbers, not the words, the numbers were beyond the demonic realm, they, like chess pieces, the numbers that is, like chess pieces, litter the end-time chess board. Now, the last solar eclipse of 2012, November the 14th, crossed the 25-degree latitude at a location 942 miles measuring to Rothschild Avenue, 105. Getting back to the rebirth date of the Christ, the rebirth date of the Christ was the 11th of January 1944. That's a direct link to Isaiah chapter 11 verse 1. However, 14 days after the rebirth date of the Christ, which was on a full moon, an eclipse occurred on the northern 25-degree latitude. So it was the 25th of January on the northern 25-degree latitude. This one, measuring from where it occurred, 8,888.8 miles to 105 Rothschild Avenue. Why? Because 888 is Jesus in Greek gematria. I'm the Alpha and the Omega. It's all a great big clue. 3 groups of 8 letters. That was a clue the Archangel Michael gave to John on the Isle of Patmos. The Archangel Michael is the presence, the heavenly presence, the angel that looks just like Jesus in his younger days, a 33-year-old man who went to the cross. So, the 888 is all about Jesus in Greek gematria. At the end of Rothschild Avenue is Harcourt Parade. So, there is a small town called Harcourt in the southern strait of Australia's Victoria state. And it is the area, that is Harcourt, is the area I declared as the New Jerusalem, referred to by the angel when speaking to Ron Wyatt at the start of this PowerPoint. That angel was my angel Michael, my heavenly presence. He looks just like I did as Jesus and as my 33-year-old self in this life, 34 years ago. No, longer, 36 years ago now. And my blood has 3 unusual chromosomes. They are numbered 3, 4 and 13. 3, 4, 1, 3 in the Greek concordance is Michael the Archangel. What is it all about? A small street in the Harcourt area is called Eagle Road. The map shows 2. Now, why Harcourt? Well, it's where I was staying at a farm, had to be organised for me, and this is where I ended up and where we were continuing to work and upload from the farm at Harcourt, but all divinely orchestrated. Doesn't matter who the other players are involved, whether they have a clue or not or deny it, doesn't matter, it's all divine. So the map shows 2 blue lines from the Rothschild address of 105 Rothschild Avenue to Eagle Road, north and south end of Eagle Road. Now, measuring from the southern end of Eagle Road back to the house at 105 Rothschild Avenue, and then to the northern end of Eagle Road, both distances, when added together, total 888 miles. This is actually 2 lines. You can see the gap when you get closer into the map. See the 2 lines here. This is Eagle Road North, Eagle Road South. Quite a gap between the 2 of them. And just look at the longitude here, 144 east. Hello! Now, the length when measured back to the birthplace of the Christ, 443.3 miles. The second leg measures 444.7, add them together to total 888. There it is. These are the 2 lines. Add them together for 888 miles. Jesus. Harcourt, 144,000 at 1 here. Okay, so it's all about the synchronicity of the numbers. So the length of Eagle Road just happens to measure at 2.11 miles. 211 is alabaster, quoting Matthew 26:7. There came unto him a woman having an alabaster box of very precious ointment, and poured it on his head as he sat at meat. Mark 14:3. And being in Bethany in the house of Simon the leper, as he sat at meat, there came a woman having an alabaster box of ointment of spikenard very precious. And she brake the box and poured it on his head. Luke 7:37, and behold, a woman in the city, which was a sinner, when she knew that Jesus sat at meat in the Pharisee's house, brought an alabaster box of ointment. Yes, that was Mary Magdalene. Now in kilometres, the 888 is 1429 from 1427 and 5443, the Commonwealth of Israel, the 12 tribes. So this is what it's all about. And Jesus said unto them, Verily I say unto you, that ye which have followed me, in the regeneration, when the Son of Man shall sit in the throne of his glory, ye shall also sit upon 12 thrones, judging the 12 tribes of Israel. Greek Dictionary 14:27, 2 and 10, a dozen, 12. Luke 22:30, that ye may eat and drink at my table in my kingdom, and sit on thrones, judging the 12 tribes of Israel. So this is a flesh and blood existence, not a floaty ghost existence. Now we have Eagle Road and we have 105 Rothschild Avenue, and it dominates It's the Rothschild that dominates the 12 tribes of Israel and is judged by Christ, the reincarnate of Jesus, the 888. In the book of Revelation, it states the 12 angels are representative of the 12 tribes, which appears to be elevated to a saintly, angelic status. Yet judgment is not predicted to be one way or the other. If it were, what would be the point of myself, Yahweh, coming to the earth and to be rejected by the same? Just not logical. I find them all guilty of being devil-worshipping, satanic and cruel, and have no inclination to grant any of them the right to exist further. In particular, England, Canada, Australia, New Zealand, and the most evil of all, the United States, the enemy of all people. These are the two solar eclipses, the first occurring 14 days after the rebirth of the Christ on January the 25th rather, in 1944. The distance 8888.8 miles from where it occurred on the 25-degree latitude north. The final eclipse in 2012, the birth date of Vlad the Impaler, Prince Charles, November 14th, 2012. The distance 942 miles. The verse total, and it's also the number of verses in 1 Chronicles. The solar eclipse that occurred on January the 25th, 1944, was over the altar to the Lord in the midst of Egypt, which of course is the Great Pyramid. 942 days old when my family moved to Mascot, Sydney, away from 105 Rothschild Avenue. Now it is necessary to point out to those who are followers that I must repeat the extraordinary events of my life, for those who stumble into my world, compelled by that thought within them of trying to find hope in a bewildering world of deception. As Jesus I said, and I say again, if they hate me, they will hate you. I have led the most bewildering life, always stunned by the relentless absurdities of events day after day. The demonic world has gathered like the ebb tide of the sea of the dead, rolling back, then washing souls up onto the earth through reincarnation. Souls gathered upon the earth for my judgment. Christianity, so stupid to support Satan worshippers whose entire agenda is to forbid what I stood for then and now. Their agenda is that my true teachings must be eliminated from the world as a whole. Protocols of Zion, number 14. We shall forbid Christ. Sure as hell can't forbid a 1,000-foot-high white horse riding the clouds with a floaty ghost on it. Maybe all along, Christ is back as a man. So my personal hero was Hitler, not the villain the world of Jewry paints. I, as a man, observe facts. For example, there are photographs of Auschwitz that verifies a friend of mine who I spoke often with about the events of his life as a soldier in the British Army. He told me he was with the soldiers who were the first into the camps. This is after the supposed liberation by the Allies. The atrocities that the Allies committed after they entered was absolutely horrific to read. They've all been exposed now. That cite Justice for Germans, the eyewitness accounts of those who were prisoners when the Allies entered. Okay, so he told me he was with the soldiers first into the camps. He said thousands of men, women and children were starving. In the far corner of the camp was a pile of bodies. They were also very thin. I asked what were his thoughts. He said the dreadful disease typhus had struck after the food supply for Germany had been destroyed. Rail lines cut and all of Germany was starving. He said the soldiers were also vulnerable and mass graves had to be dug above the water table. The British tanks were brought in with blades to push shallow graves, then the bodies buried and dirt piled over them. I asked him how come there were so many people still alive. He said there were no death camps, people were starving, food had run out. Had there been daily mass murders, how come there were still thousands alive? The roundup and interning of Jews was 4 years earlier, and that was how long they were interned, kept alive in the best conditions that Hitler could organise, because he was a Catholic and had sympathy for the children who needed education of the love of Jesus. It was all about keeping them alive and out of harm's way, as the rest of Germany, Berlin and Hamburg and Dresden, of course, were bombed by the devil Churchill. That's where the real Holocaust occurred. At the Nuremberg trials run by the Zionists, confessions were extracted by torture. In this way, the commandant of Auschwitz, after being tortured, Rudolf Franz Ferdinand Hauss, in a sworn affidavit which was dated the resurrection anniversary, April 5th, 1946, being forced to give details how the camp murdered 20,000 Jews per day, later hung on April the 16th, which is the birth date of Pope Benedict XVI. In 1947, he hung for war crimes, but he left a trap in his statements. His extraordinary statements today can be examined with the reality of the capacity of the camp crematorium, and of course the witness today of those who operate major crematoriums and know how the ovens work, and the expert witnesses that have been used to absolutely pull to pieces the lie of these crematoriums that were supposed to be burning piles of body a day. Also the coal-fired furnaces, verified by aerial photographs by the British of the amount of coal piled up, and smoke from the crematorium, as well as Jews who survived. It's all out in the open now. Germans for Justice is an excellent site. The Untold Truth, or the Truth Untold, Untold History, something like that. There's lots of them out there. People are no longer having the wool pulled over their eyes. So Rudolf Franz Ferdinand Hauss had been tortured. This is the way it went in the Nuremberg. All of their confessions were derived by the most horrific tortures. So he said what they wanted him to say, embellishing the lie so that one day experts would examine his statement and see that it was a total fabrication. And that way he got them back. Now the average temperature year-round in Auschwitz was 8 degrees Celsius. Cyclone B, a cyanide pellet of wood fibre soaked in cyanide, was used to fumigate clothing to kill lice, fleas and any bug causing diseases. In his statement, the host said the pellets were poured into the chamber where the people were gathered. The pellets would fall on the concrete floor and gas the people. The reality is that Cyclone B would not release unless the temperature was 25.7 degrees Celsius, so that no possible gas could escape from the pellets. There was supposed to be 2,000 per cycle. The deaths of the prisoners took 3 minutes and then 30 minutes wait before the bodies were removed. Then the bodies were cremated, and this procedure continued 10 times a day to murder 20,000 per day. The camp started building the gas chamber in June 1942. If we assume August to liberation, that is August in 1942, and then to liberation in May 1945, so how many could he, Hoss, have killed? 20,000 a day times 2.5 years equals 18,250,000 bodies. We must assume if he had organised the chambers to be a revolving door in one end and out the other, 20,000 a day, then the one camp could have killed every Jew in Europe in 125 days. It will be required reading of Mein Kampf in the years to come when my world will re-educate the children with truth regardless of what is exposed. With the start of World War II, many German Jews and Europe fled. The date March 24th, 1933, just 53 days after Hitler was elected, the Jews known as Judea declared war on Germany, promoting a boycott of all German goods. Made front headline news, of course out of New York, America. It was all the international Jews. Even the German Jews pled with them to back off, that they were harming them living in Germany. They had nothing against the German government. They were doing well there, and they were pleading with the international community to back off. But no, because they don't care about sacrificing their own. So what did Hitler do that was so evil? Well, he started printing his own money, didn't he? The Rothschild banking stranglehold was broken. At the time, when Hitler took over, 153 of the 160 banks in Berlin were all Jews, owned by Jews. And it was usury, of course, was killing the lives of the German people. So, the banking stronghold was broken. A barter system was started between the nations that traded with Germany. And throughout a very short time, 6 million jobs were created. Families were given houses. A newlywed couple was supplied with a house that was to be paid off in 10 years. However, when a child was born, a gift reduced the debt by 1/4, a second another quarter. So over 4 children, the debt was completely cancelled. The loan interest-free, the debt was discharged completely. The house was theirs. It was all to encourage German couples to have children and raise them as Christian families. Jesus-loving Christian families who had no need to worry for the basics in life. This is what Hitler was all about, creating that kingdom of God upon the earth. On the other hand, now you've got the royal line of the Saudi Arabian dynasty being exposed as Jewish. A writer named Mohammed Sakhir exposed the Jewish roots of the royal family of Saudi Arabia, Saudi being their family name, Saud. And he, of course, was murdered. Now, Obama, this brings us back to Obama, he's hand in hand with the Saudis. This is what the chemical gas it was used by the rebels in Syria. And even the rebels themselves, the militants, are telling how they didn't know what was in these canisters, and there were no instructions. And they said outright that Prince Bandar of Saudi Arabia, if he's going to be sending us weapons, needs to send instructions to how to use it. They caused the explosions which hurt themselves. They didn't know how to handle the sarin gas. However, Obama is hand in hand with the Saudis. They're great buddies. So who finances the rebels in Syria? The Saudis. Washington's blessing, the Saudis, and Qatar, to the tune of $3 billion. All with Israel in the background there, the maggots that they are. That's what Jews are, maggots. Hitler had it right. Now, Obama is descended from his Kenyan grandfather, who was a member of the Mau Mau under Kenyatta. This monster formed a terrorist group in Kenya when it was ruled by England. I met a man on a ship when I travelled to Kenya in 1983. We were standing casually at a bar where I would order a coffee and cake, being a non-drinker. We chatted and he revealed he was a trooper for the government. He and his group were employed to combat the terrorist attacks against farmers. He said that the workers on a farm would be infiltrated by the mule. The recruitment was macabre, to say the least. I won't go into details for fear of propagating the mental thought which is best kept from the innocent. However, so horrid were the oaths the recruit was forced to undertake, once exposed to the ritual, which I will say involved human cannibalism of the recruit's family member he selected, and on and on. The fear created was so entrenched the recruit would do whatever commanded, or he became the next victim. He told me that at a given moment, the farm workers would attack the farmer's family and butcher them. Often the workers were lifelong employees. He said he and 2 other troopers had shaved their heads, blackened their skin and dressed as natives, then made their way to a ritual taking place at night, stood back from the area observing what transpired. He related to me every detail, and to this day I have not fully disclosed it to anyone for the reason as stated. However, as the Lord, you may by now grasp, I am led by angelic influence to be at the right place at the right time. My first night in Nairobi, I was penniless. My supposed friend, Hank Dubois, had abandoned me in Aden, leaving with all of our money. All I had was a few Malay dollars, worthless to get by on. Fortunately, I arrived in Nairobi and I explained I had been left on the dock in Aden. The manager of the Victoria Hotel gave me a room for the night. Now, as I am the Lord, my task was to experience the earth as shown me by angels. So a sleep-deprived night of anguish was wakened by a black man in my room, a rather startling awakening. He greeted me as he placed a pot of tea beside the bed. My experiences in Africa are too numerous to relate here, as it would require 1,000 pages to adequately relate. I often recall the relentless outpouring of angelic situations organised by a divine tour guide. This encounter with this young trooper opened my eyes to gross evil so macabre it defies innocent minds, descended from spiritual ideals of Jesus' love. Obama's descended from the mule. A recent photograph shows him holding a book, a finger inserted, marking the page he was at when interrupted. The World Post-America, or something like that title. It might be slightly different, but bottom line, it was the condition of the world after America. Now, as said, he is in bed with the royals of Saudi Arabia, they of Jewish descent, who routinely behead people in the public square. I have, in their opinion, a weakness. That is, I suffer from a chronic case of love, which brings me to an explanation of judgment. My task at this time is to observe, and whatever appalls and offends me, the angels will deal with upon their arrival. Their space vehicle is a planet belonging to Nibiru. Obama called Omombo, left by one commenter, and the comment said he's the son of a Jew. And he's been placed in power by the Jews, posing as a Muslim, yet a member of the Skull and Bones fraternity out of Yale with the bonesman name Undertaker. However, it is also known or reported that Obama hates Netanyahu. Now, it has been noticed that Obama has been avoiding war, dancing around. This is also observations out there. He phoned Israel and told them he was going to wait for the Senate to reconvene and let them decide if they wanted America to attack Syria. I remind you, I sent Obama an email advising him not to go underground in Denver as he would be sacrificed. As he has an intimate knowledge of what his grandfather experienced, to suddenly have myself warn him of his pending assassination by the Jews, remembering Kennedy. I pointed out he had made videos addressing the pending collision of Nibiru as a State of the Union speech 2 years prior to the impact. A stupid move for any president making speeches covering all future events. As if it were now, he could be killed and kept quiet, which was the intention underground in Denver. Later, 2 CIA tunnels were locked shut and the pressure raised to 19.7 atmospheres, finally blowing out the doors, depressurizing, turning everything to dust, which takes us back to that scripture about the stone that the builders rejected, and anybody who falls upon it will be broken. However, that anybody that the stone itself falls upon will be ground to powder. Well, hello? It's all about repenting. Those that fall upon the stone, the rejected capstone of the pyramid, who is the Christ, known as by Leonard Golightly Marshall today, will be broken in spirit. They'll have humbled themselves and will be broken, however they will live. Much will the stone fall on them in judgment, because they have not repented. They will be ground to dust. That's what it's all about. As said, my task has been to reveal to the world my divinity in thousands of ways. Like driving around the world with each street a number on the post with my name encoded, it is that obvious. But people are locked into their own narrow prejudice and unconcerned that they could be wrong, as their Jesus or God does not fit the reality of my presence. The Bible, as corrupt as it is, does have obscure messages as follows. Of note in the verse is the confirmation in the verse number when read as the Strong's Concordance number. Greek Dictionary 1231, to know thoroughly, ascertain exactly, inquire, and know the uttermost. So Matthew 13:39, the enemy that sowed them is the devil. The harvest is the end of the world, and the reapers are the angels. Greek Dictionary 1339 from 1223 and 2476, to stand apart, that is, to remove, intervene, go further, be parted after the space of. So the Strong's confirms the verse. Without this confirmation, the key verses are separated by rhetoric. Of course, the end of the world is the end of the geopolitical construct that is known as the world, not the end of the earth, the creation of Yahweh. John 8:44, ye are of your father the devil, and the lusts of your father ye will do. He was a murderer from the beginning, and abode not in the truth, because there is no truth in him. When he speaketh a lie, he speaketh of his own, for he is a liar and the father of it. Greek Dictionary 844 from 846, 3155, self-moved, automatic, spontaneous, of own accord of self, rather. Harp caused the hurricane, and the military detonated the banks of the levees holding back the Mississippi River. This is Hurricane Katrina. I was there before it happened. The levees are huge. I was also in Waco before the Branch Davidians were murdered. A 51-day siege ending in the entire complex being burned to the ground, killing over 100 people, mainly children. The FEMA camps, for a long time the rumours were circulating. No, it could not be true. Then the millions of coffins were discovered. Then the 130,000 FEMA train carriages were discovered in Montana. I had driven through there as well. All this going on during George Walker Bush's administration. Did you know his mother was the daughter of Alistair Crowley? He reportedly the most evil man on earth in his time, 70-odd years ago. How is it possible you Americans are so dumb as to allow the son-in-law of Crowley, then his grandson, become president of a so-called Christian nation? How many people who were rounded up during Katrina were Protestant Christians? How many were expecting to be raptured? How many believed they were saved by grace? How many actually read what I said? Take up your cross and follow me. As they were lined up for the guillotine, did they wonder why they had not been raptured? Is there any church in the American Bible Belt preaching this question? Where are they? Is there any church preaching grace is a lie, telling you my blood was to demonstrate how I went to the cross willingly to expose the evil of the Jews at that time, and today a more sinister fake Jew has put on the Ronald McDonald clown suit, the Khazar Mongols? Quoting, and when he had called the people unto him with his disciples also, he said unto them, whosoever will come after me, let him deny himself, and take up his cross, and follow me. So I say, it is by works you inherited the kingdom of God here upon the earth. But if confronted by psychopaths who demand to know if you worship Jesus, deny me and save your families from the guillotine. You cannot overcome soldiers with M16 rifles. I am appalled by the countless millions who died in the Colosseums in Rome. We drove through Rome often. We have driven through Rome often, along roads where beneath are the catacombs, then the Colosseum. I feel today that if these millions had saved their families, then the years after they could have preached Jesus to the unconverted. It is one thing for me to have fulfilled the sacrificial law and done away with the lamb's sacrifice of blood, which I should add is supposed to have limited the eyes of God, unable to see the sin through the blood. This fairy tale was to overcome the insanity of the laws of Moses that evolved out of a perversion by Lucifer over the priesthood that rewrote the laws of Moses. There were 10 commandments, not one is a spreadsheet showing what punishment would be the law. Picking up 6 on a Sabbath was a death penalty. Hello? Note the lowercase m from Numbers 15:32. And while the children of Israel were in the wilderness, they found a man that gathered sticks upon the Sabbath day, small s. The penalty. Is this what Jesus would have decreed? And remember, if you've seen God, you've seen me, or if you've seen me, you have seen the Father. It's not a question, it's a statement of truth. Going on to verse 36. And the Lord said unto Moses, the man shall be surely put to death. All the congregation shall stone him with stones without the camp. That was not Jesus talking. I, to this day, watch where I walk to avoid crushing ants. Obama, he may have had a change of heart, as he has openly discussed it with Netanyahu. He may have at one stage intended to go along with the Jews of Saudi Arabia royals and the Jews in the Knesset under the yoke of Zionism Rothschilds to attack Syria, while Russia and Iran are aware exactly what these monsters are all about. Qatar and Saudi Arabia are 2 players in the rebels financed into atrocities in Syria. The latest move was to accuse Assad of using chemical weapons against his own people. The reality is it was the rebels. Assad is an eye surgeon who has dedicated his life to helping people. His wife, an Englishwoman, is a champion in aid for refugees that have fled from Iraq. The last count, there were 1.5 million of them that Syria was caring for, is caring for. Qatar produces natural gas. Russia has vast quantities of natural gas and oil. It intends to put a gas pipeline down through Syria. It already has a port it has built in Syria. Saudi Arabia threatened Russia. It will cause terrorist attacks during the Winter Games in Russia, which is February next year, unless Russia agrees to walk away from Assad and let the country fall to the rebels. Vladimir Putin responded that if Saudi Arabia backing the rebels escalated the attack on Syria, it would take it as an attack on Russia and retaliate immediately with full force against Zionist Saudi Arabia. It was let them have it. Putin grew up in Russia. When it was dominated by Jews, he is totally aware of their evil. Iran has said if the USA attacks, they would annihilate Tel Aviv. As they know, the Jews are behind and control the USA government, Rothschild and Saudi Arabia. The USA always overdoes the flag-waving democratic saviors of the world propaganda when it is a Jewish weapon hell-bent on destroying everything Christian and good. Understanding how it all fits together, the Holy Bible is as toxic as the bubonic plague. It has Jesus coming in the clouds. No, he is already here. The clouds means confusion, a parable. That is, it is like, not is. And that is me. And frankly, I am not trying to convince you I am. For what is truth is not negotiable. What I can prove to you is the Holy Bible is a Freemason Lucifer trap. I shudder to think people were convinced. They had to not deny me unto death, walking into the lions' dens in Rome. In Rome, they were dealing with mental cases. And who were behind the Caesars? Jews. Who translated the Bible? The same. Now remember, there are over 4,000 FEMA camps. All have a guillotine. The Jews were behind the French Revolution. Hello? Anything with a guillotine, beheading, the Jews are behind it. The reader seeking truth, his or her spirit, confused, begs a satisfactory answer to be revealed by one's highest self or God. I, being the Comforter, must explain all things, and as the end is near, the opposition to my teaching stops it at every opportunity. You can test it yourself. What the beast fears most of all is its total destruction, a spiritual system devastating the entire world. From its perspective, Lucifer was horrified, its grip slipping in my first contact with the Pope Benedict XVI, who believed and announced, "I am Jesus reincarnated." Then when I wrote Vatican III for the Pope Benedict, it was out there in the spiritual realm where our angels awaited it. They know why I constantly upload to the internet. They know the angels are waiting for them, and they are not for human recognition, they are for my angels as to progress. And I have simply seen all I need to see. I have no problem with Russia removing Saudi Arabia and Iran, Tel Aviv. What I have not told the Pope is the total failure of ourselves and our disciples in raising concern for him being locked up in the Vatican by the Antichrist. He, believing in me, automatically shut the eyes of supposed Christians all over the world. So the beast system removes the truth of his imprisonment in the Vatican, like a voice of one crying in the wilderness, a voice echoing around the world, heard only by a few connected individuals, alerting their angels as they act as intermediaries communicating to the angelic realm as a whole via their own angel. Start reaping. My task is to do everything I can as a man to overcome the Christian stupidity devoured by Satan, Paul. Paul is the false apostle. The angels are watching our efforts, and for them my rejection is a proof even I, the Lord, cannot break through total rejection. This is what the angels are preordained to wait for, knowing they are being released from the restraint of time, knowing Lucifer's annihilation rests solely upon Christian lack of human reaction. I have said continually, I am here for the children. The adults are the problem. So we have demonstrated it was the angels who built the pyramids and all of the structures in Egypt, as well as all of the amazing buildings around the world. Gigantic stones quarried smooth on all four sides. The Baalbek, 1,000 plus tons, is half excavated, dragged out, resting on an angle emerging from the quarry. Yet no researchers ask how the underside is also smooth. Another, weighing 555 tons, sits below the Temple Mount. It 11.626 metres long. It had to have been quarried and transported, then set perfectly aligned and level. Here it is here. This is Temple Mount. 116.26 pyramid inches, of course, the width of the antechamber, and is the key to the house of David given to the Christ. Isaiah 22:22, key of the house of David. It's that number, 11626. It's the age I was when I married Lucifer's choice. I was 1162.6 weeks old. The same age between Michelle Nye, she, my third wife, who is Mary Magdalene reincarnate, she 1162.6 days younger than I, her daughter 11.626 years younger than my eldest daughter. Both of them born in cities when the sunrise to sunset was 888 minutes for the day, and I was 8,880 days old when my daughter was born, and on and on and on it goes. A series of miracles. When understood, a coincidence creates a mathematical formula, not possible unless divine. On the next slide, the Baalbek quarry, a stone levelled underneath, means it had to be squared on 4 sides and ends. It's over 1,000 tons. We see a gent peering underneath it. But begs the question, how and who? Then why left protruding out at that angle? The alien idea is irrelevant. To have built such wonders then left is ludicrous. Or fallen to some catastrophic event is ludicrous. Reality check. The world monuments were left by angels as a wake-up call of the divine. Buildings so remote and often at altitudes where breathing is difficult and it defies imagination. One conclusion, the angels of God, and they are at the door, so keep looking up. Here is that huge Baalbek stone. These stones are just astonishing. Again. Clearly shown, the underside is also squared off. The angle is identified when rotated. It is 105 degrees, which is eagle or angel in Greek. So we end this slide with a rotated photograph. Yeah, I was just showing his finger up, like his middle finger up. Okay, so there we have another one, guys. Finish here to get this one up. And angels begin